Hello, everyone. Yes, today we are continuing with our series of ethical hacking. As I promised in the last video that we have decided to have this approach, today we are going to practically demonstrate those stages of ethical hacking because the methodology is so important. If you understand it and how those stages are related and what is their significance in the actual ethical hacking or penetration testing, then the focus from here onwards will be just on tools. And of course, we'll be covering tools based on what we seems best. We're covering different tools from different stage. We're no longer talking about stage then. We just say, come on, there is these tools and it is used for this purpose. So this is the essence of today's session. And remember, today we are not focusing on tools or on techniques of ethical hacking, though that is what we'll be doing. We'll have a scenario where we hack a certain Linux box. So we are focusing on explaining the stages. What are we doing practically in each stage? And what is the significance of every stage and how are they related? Because some people have different views of hacking. Others, when they head like there is this hacker has hacked this system, they just having a view of the movies. Like you see in a movie, someone gets the laptop, placing the buttons like 3 seconds and say, I've hacked their cameras, I've hacked the Pentagon. Now, in reality, things are not as easy as they seems in the TVs or in the notion we have. That's why this video is very important if you are serious and undertaking ethical hacking or penetration testing, then this is the very fundamental, the building block of it. And after you have understood it, then focusing on tools is just as what seems best. And of course, from here now onwards, we're no longer talking more about this stage, no longer, but we're focusing on tools and we'll tell you what stage are these tools are used. And as long as you understand the cycle, we are good to go. So we have a WhatsApp number at the bottom right of the screen. If you have stuck somewhere, you have not understand the stage, you can prompt us on WhatsApp and we'll respond to you. But please, on this video, don't ask more about, I have heard that you have used Nmap. What is the Metasploit used for? Because it's not the essence. All those tools demonstrated in this video and even more and more real life scenario tools, we are going to discuss them as we keep on maturing this particular series. But for this particular session, questions and prompt should be based on the stage. If you have not understood them and their relation, yes, you can prompt us. So the first stage, as we covered in the previous video, and please, if you have not viewed the previous video, then you do have to view them because this is a series and we are building every video on top of the previous one. So the pre-engagement stage, we say that in this stage is where we are focusing more on documentation and legalization of this penetration testing. And in this video, we are not going to talk more about it because it's more about document procedures and all those stuffs. But what I can say you should not engage yourself in any penetration testing task without having a formal written authorization from your client, even if it's in your own organization. Not just because you have got these skills, then you can just start penetration testing the production level system and so on and so on. No, you need to have a written authorization that you can undertake this task, then you can proceed. And there are so many things to consider in that written authorization. But as I said in this video, we are not going to talk more about that. But we are going to go to the actual second stage, which is the first stage of execution, actual practical execution. And this one is what we call information gathering. So after talking with your client and having a written authorization, you will know the scope of what you are supposed to do in that particular penetration testing or ethical hacking. It may be just focusing on testing the weakest layer in the chain, which are the users, using the social engineering attacks. Then it means you will need to know where can I get the emails, the domain, the accounts, how can I enumerate them, how can I fool them. There are different scenarios and different scopes, and we are going to see in different scenarios we use different tools, and we are not using one tool. As I've been emphasized from the beginning, in this endeavors of cybersecurity, we don't have one superb tool. We use tools based on what we have at hand. What we need is to sharpen our skills in mastering those tools that we know they help out the most, and moreover, to make the most of our creativity and imagination, because there is where you really find things that other people cannot have. Because if you just be working as a robot, knowing the command of the tools and just pushing them without reasoning, then you may end up finding nothing. While someone comes after you and finding a lot of things, because in this kind of task, you need to be very creative and have an analytical perspective. All those things we're going to keep on covering in this channel. So for the case of this demonstration, we are given this target. The scope is just we have given the IP, which we know in one way or another it is a machine, a computer in whatever manner, and we are supposed to penetration testing. That is the scope. It means our scope is we can do anything but in the scope of this particular machine. Now let's go to the first stage, which is information gathering. What are we doing there? If we have got this preliminary information, for us to make the most of the task and uncovering as many weaknesses and of course exploitation as possible, we need to get enough or sufficient information about the scope. As I said, tools will be used based on what we are covering. So now we are focusing on this particular box hacking. We are not told about to penetration testing the user, so we are not involving social engineering attacks. We are not talking about malware engineering or source code, whatever. We are not talking about that. We are just talking about we have a box, we have to see how secure it is. So based on these scenarios, we need to get more information. Remember, whenever you head or you engage yourself in ethical hacking, you have to find a weakness because it's all about trying to break in. So you need to find the weakest point of that asset and try to break in. That's where we need to get more information about that particular asset. And those weaknesses, they are not found in just in utopia. Those weaknesses are found based on the components. Maybe it may be an operating system level weakness, which we call them vulnerability. It may be some service running on that particular box. It may be config. So there are many angles to consider. But the most trivial things to do, you need to know more about this particular asset. Then what service are running on it? What application are stored on that particular box? Because there is where you can move further. If you know there is this service or there is this application, then you're starting from there, you move onward. So if there is this application, is there a public known weakness of this particular application? But now we are in the phase of trying to know what component, what services, what application, what operating system. All those information, we need to get them from just this single IP. So by these scenarios, then we use tools that help us to list the service or enumerate the service. If you would have been focusing on web application, then we would have need another tools, maybe to finding the subdomains and whatever. There are different areas like we're trying to brute forcing the directories, the path, and so and so. But for this scenario, we are focusing on this machine. Then we need to enumerate the service. We need to know more about what is this component, this asset comprised of. So for that purpose, we are going to use a tool known as Nmap. And remember, as I said, the focus of this video is not the fancying of hacking. So we are using very simple tools. Of course, the same simple tools can solve very complex tasks. But for now, we are not focusing more on the tools. We are just focusing on these stages. So I've divided my screen into 4 parts just for either navigation. But all of this is a shell. So I can see where I am, my attack box has this IP 10.0.2.15, and I'm told that I'm supposed to attack or to penetration testing this IP, which is 10.0.2.11. So those are the IP I have, for this scenario. Now I need to get more information about what service are there. We call it service enumeration or network enumeration because of the scenario we have at end. So I'm going to use this tool, and don't worry more about the command that I'm supplying it now. We are going to talk more about all these tools as we mature in this series. As I said, here we are focusing on the stage. But in simple terms, what I'm trying to tell, I'm telling these tools called Nmap, please scan this particular asset. And in this particular asset, give me every service that is running. And we talk about service, we talk about ports. Because for service to be available, there has to be a port associated with it. So give me every open port with their service. And even not just give me the service, even their particular version number, I need to get them. And learn some script to tell me more about this box. What operating system is that particular box running over? And you will notice that all this information that we inquire from these tools are crucial for us. Remember, information gathering and vulnerability assessment are the most important one. If you have done this exhaustively and as creative as possible, then the following steps are more of mechanic. Of course, still there are some issues to consider and advance the skills, but these two stages are the one that we need to make the most. And of course, in reality, they are the one that are most underperformed. For most people, they just think it is just cool to see that I've hacked the box, but they forget that if you have not get enough information about what service, maybe you have missed, there is a service running on that box, but you don't know about it, you have missed it, and then you move forward, you don't find anything, any vulnerability, any exploit. But if you could have known that service maybe is the only one that is vulnerable. So this stage is very important. Of course, I'm waiting for results here, but to save time, I'm going to pause the video, then resuming when we have the results. Yeah. Okay, as you can see now, we get the results. And something that I forgot to mention, one switch that I've used in this particular tools is to instruct it scan for all ports, not just the default ports, all available ports that a particular box can have. As I said, I have to do this as extensive as possible because you may be focused on the common ports. Maybe I'm focusing on Telnet and SSH if I can find them. But in reality, somebody still have those ports open, but not in the common ports that we know. Maybe learning SSH on or learning Telnet on port maybe 400 instead of the common one. If it's, no, I'm not mistaken, it's 21. So that's why we have to scan for all ports. All these are emphasized to make sure that in this stage of information gathering, make sure you get as exhaustive information as possible. So try to understand now these results. And this is going to be one of your daily tasks, to going through each line and making sense of it. Don't just take things faster because I just want to find quick issues. No, try to be patient and perseverance and yet creative and thinking outside the box. So these results show us the port, of course, 21 and its TCP port. It is open, of course, the service that ran on that particular port, FTP, and the version number. So just by this information, if you could have missed something like a version number or a certain service, it would have made our next stage more difficult. For instance, see all these details listed here. Like FTP, it still has anonymous FTP login allowed. So this is also an issue because if you have an anonymous account, then someone can even try to use a default password or trying even now to brute forcing the password just by knowing from the information you have gathered, not just I have an FTP, it's also at this version. This version will help you to know if there are particular vulnerability for that particular version. If I don't have this version number, I just have the service, still I could get to know if they have vulnerabilities. But remember, I would have to do a lot of trial and error because I don't know the specific version. Because you may have a service that is vulnerable in version A, but in version B and C later, they have fixed it. So if you don't have a specific version number, that is also an issue. All these things that I'm trying to explain is just to make sure that whenever you are doing this, make the most of every stage. If it's the information gathering, then gather as much information as possible so that your preceding stage, you narrow your focus. Let me relearn the same tools by using a different command so that we do one-to-one comparison of what the same stage could have happened if I could have just done it superficial. So I'm learning the same tool, Nmap, and I'm just telling it to scan this particular box. And of course, because also this will take time, I will pause the video and resume. Of course, I can continue. I think I can continue still explaining them as this one is still running. Okay, so you can see all this service, all this information, and of course, the output here is already given. So you can see it's the same tools now. By just changing or tweaking the command, the level of information I get is different. You can see here I also get the service, but there is no information about the same. Let us focus on this first output, which is the same FTP, but it has just ended there. There's no version number, which means, as I say now, if I'll move to vulnerability assessment, because I will need to come in a kind of cross-checking the service with vulnerability database, public or private available, to see if there is any exploit, any vulnerability related to that particular service. Having it as generic as it is, I may have a number of vulnerabilities, but I cannot be sure now which one I can use for this particular service of mine. But having a version like this, it means now I can narrow the focus. So you can see that if I have not mastered, for instance, these tools enough to know the difference, I can have this version and this version of command. And these are just few. There are so many variations of the same tools. So you need also to have master. You don't need to have as many tools as other people have, but make sure the tools that you opt for your undertaking, you have mastered them and you have ensured yourself. The more you practice, the more you customize your tool and your methodology, of course. So that's the difference that I wanted you to see. And of course, I can even have different result if I could have used a different tool. That's why I said we don't have a one superb tool. It's not like always we are going to use Nmap, though Nmap is used in most, even the other tools that are doing this kind of gathering information, network enumeration, they are using it, but it's not like the alpha and omega tool. There are other tools available. So you need to have a skills about as many tools as possible, but at each tool that you are using, make sure that you attain the master level so that you don't just touch like 10 tools superficial while you could have just used one and make the most of it. So by tweaking the tool or changing the tool, the level of information I get differs, and it matters the most because the less information I get, I become less competent in finding what I'm supposed to find, which are the weakness. Yeah. So I can try to peruse. There are so many services listed here. Of course, here is the focus. This was just for comparison. Like I have this another service, the version and details I have telling it. So it's your task now to go through each service and each line so that any small detail that you have found relevant or significance in your undertaking, you make sure that you do not miss it. Now let's go to the down of this output. You can see because one of the command or the switch we used, we told this tool to try to fingerprinting or to try to discern what is the OS that particular box is learning. And this is known as a SMB OS discovery script. So it tells us it's a Unix based, and of course, other information are found. Just by knowing that this is a Unix or a Linux box and it is not a Windows box, it helps you a lot, as we are going to see when we are exploiting or when we are finding vulnerability. You may find an issue for a particular service, but that issue is only available in a particular operating system. So if you have just missed that it has this OS on it, and you just see that there is this vulnerability to this service, and even the same version now, and then you are trying to apply the exploit, still it will not work. And maybe you may think that something is wrong or you have not understood it. But the only thing that you have missed is in your information gathering, you didn't get about the OS that lands the particular asset that you are trying to focus on. As you can see on this superficial thing, there is nothing tangible about the OS. So that, as I said, in this kind of results, there will be more trial and error because most of the information are not given so far. So that's it. Now let's go to the next stage. We have done the information gathering based on the scenario. As I said, it is based on the scenario. Some scenarios will just need you to go to use tools that traverse the net and finding public available information. But for our case, this is the tool that we can use based on our scenario. So the next stage, after getting enough information, now move in the next stage where you need to find what are the weaknesses. If you have known now all the application, the operating system, the service running, now you need to go to each particular service and try to discern whether there is a public information about vulnerability for that particular service. There are numbers of tools to use. As I said, we are just using most of the tools that are default in Kali Linux. So for this case, we are going to use a tool called SageSploit, which is actually it is as a database of public available vulnerability for all common service or for all common information. So we are just cross-checking. We are telling it we have this service. Do you have any vulnerability concerning this particular service? And it gives us the results. And they are different. As I said, there is no one approach. We are just narrowed here to focus on the stage more than the tools and the extensiveness of the actual hacking. Other alternative would have been using the private database like those in commercial vulnerability assessment tools or other public database that are available like Rapid7 vulnerability database, exploit database. All those are possible. But for our case now, we are using this tool, which is already in Kali Linux. So its format is just search exploit, then you specify the service. Like let's just take the first example. This is my service FTP, but the actual version is this one. So for me to be very specific and to get things that are very specific to my particular box, not just a generic FTP, this particular FTP, I specify the version, I mean the name and the version number. Then I learn it. Of course, the command that I learn it is not typed okay. It has to be search exploit. There's no O. Here it is. Now you can see I get just two vulnerabilities, and these vulnerabilities are very specific to my particular service and with its own version number. So if I will try this, the probability for me to be successful is higher rather than I could have just get a list of vulnerabilities that are general for FTP. And it tells me that it's a backdoor command execution. There is a script you can learn. And of course, there is a script that you can learn by using Metasploit. Now you can see even I get more information in my vulnerability assessment. Not just there is a script I can learn, but we have this, the most common or the most famous network penetration testing framework called Metasploit. Then it tells me I can even use this framework to automatically exploiting it. So you can see I even get more information, not just doing trial and error. These guys have already done their homework. There is a module for me to start exploiting it straightforward. That's the beauty of having this stage executed exhaustively and in that given manner. So let me learning the same service, but now using this version of output, because here I just got an FTP. I have no service. I mean, I have no the version number, the version of the particular service. You see now, I have all these vulnerabilities for the FTP, 100 of them, if I'm not mistaken. Now, if I would have opted for this approach, doing information gathering as superficial as this, then you can see my next stage now, I would have to try or to learn more about all these possibilities of exploiting that particular service, which actually is not feasible in reality. It's not feasible. But the only difference is how exhaustively and how creative was I in my previous stages. So this is how these stages are related to each other. So because I've done my first stage in a good manner, learning it, I'm just focusing on these two particular trial. And of course, the probability of success here is higher than this previous approach. So I'm supposed to go to each service and try to find the vulnerabilities for all these possible services listed here. For all of them, of course. That is what I'm supposed to do. Of course, I can even try, like I have my SQL here. Maybe let me try if there is any issue for my SQL version, because I can try them all. I'm just trying to make the most of the stages and their relationship here. So let's try me for my SQL. There is nothing. So in reality, it's not like every service that you are going to find, you are going to find vulnerabilities. And in most cases, you may not find vulnerabilities for most services just because of missing the previous stage or of missing to tweak the particular tool that you are using. Because even this search exploit and other tool, they are also variation of trying to knocking it and finding issues. So you can see this is how we are doing now. We are in the vulnerability assessment, try to assess as all these services. In reality, I was supposed to go to each and every this spot that is open and check for this service. Let me also try checking for this one, Unreal IRC. This is also a service. You can learn more about what service is all about. If you can just Google about it, it will tell you. So maybe let me try again for this service. As I said, in reality, I'm supposed to go to each and every service, something that I cannot afford in this demonstration. So I'm learning it. Also, it tells me like these are the issue it has found. There is the backdoor, and of course, Metasploit framework also has the module for me to execute it. Okay, so all the information you can just read them. There are different ways I can make the most of it. Now, based on the tool that I used in vulnerability assessment, it also simplify my next stage, which is exploitation. As you can see, it does not only tell me that there is this type of vulnerability, it tells me where I can find a particular exploit and make the use of it. So you could have used another tool, but maybe that particular tool could have just told you, yes, there is this vulnerability. But for you to find the expert, then you need to go and doing searching in the internet or cross-checking with other tools. So the tools also is also important. But this part of the tool is so tricky. The more you are using them, the more you customize yourself. And there is no universal rule of thumb. These tools will differ in preference. If the particular tool is suitable for someone, it does not mean it's suitable for everyone else. But as long as you have checked all your possibilities, then you come out with your own customized tool set that will make the most for every stages. So for the tool as used, it tells me like for this vulnerability, I can even use Metasploit framework and exploiting it automatically. I don't need to try this script and some scripts. You need to compile them, to configure them. For instance, those who are written in C, now that are additional tasks. But if I have something that tells me that I can use Metasploit framework and I can just use it straightforward, I just opt for it, and it has saved me a lot of time. But remember, all this time saving is based on how we have approached the particular stage. So let's now go to the next stage. You have found your vulnerabilities and even how to the information about exploiting them. Now going to actually exploiting them, going actually to make use of those loopholes and breaking to that particular box. Now I'm opting for this now particular vulnerability because it has this Metasploit framework. As I said, the objective, not the fans of hacking here, but the explanation of the stage and the relationship. So I'm going to start now this Metasploit. As I said, don't bother if you don't know about it, the command. The coming videos will be talking about these tools as we see it fit as best. Now, I will use one of its capability to search exploit because I'm told that the exploit is found. So the service is this one. So I'm telling now this tool for exploitation, search for me an exploit that is concerned with this tool. Straightforward. So you can see even the information I get is not as huge as if I could have just done it generically. I'm told straight that in this there is this module I can use to exploit this vulnerability that is found. So all I need is to configure the module and exploiting it. And one thing that I want you to remember, a malicious user need just to get one potential weakness to your system. You, as a cybersecurity defender, the blue team guy, you need to make sure of all universal possibilities out there, hundred or thousands for that particular asset, you need to consider them and closing them all. But for someone to break to your system, you just need to get one. In this sense, you can get in reality and in real life. Defending against cyber attack is more difficult than trying to break them. Other people, of course, most of the people are thinking that ethical hacking is more cool because you break. Yes, it is. But if you're talking about what is so hard, is it penetration testing and ethical hacking, or is it defending your particular network? Defending is the most difficult task. As you can see, this one, you just need to know your way around. And then if you get one, you are done. Even if that particular person has crawled the 1,000 vulnerabilities, but just leaving one unknown, then you may discover it and exploiting it. You make everything about his effort useless. So I just want you also to get that when we proceed. So now let us exploiting this particular box that we have been given from the beginning by using this module of Metasploit. So as I said, if you don't understand about the command, don't worry. I'm just setting kwamba now I want to use this module that you said you have. And of course, I need to know how can I use that particular module. I can see the options of what I need to configure for that particular module. Okay, something is not okay. Let me search it again. Okay, oh, no, not set. I just want to make it use. Yeah, here it is. I tell that I want to use it, and then you see your particular module is highlighted here. It means now I've already activated it. So I may know what should I configure to use that particular. As I said, don't bother if you don't know about these mechanics. We are going to discover a lot of tools and mechanics and techniques as we move on. The only thing that I need to set now for this option given is the IP address that I want to exploit, the one that I've given. Because remember, this is the one that we started. We knew the information, we discovered the vulnerability, and knowing what should we use, then we are using it. So there it is. And now I'm telling that exploit it, because I've already said that execute this exploit to this particular box. Now execute it. Now you see the feedback. I've done it purposely so that you can get something additional. It tells me that the exploit has failed. A payload has not been selected. Exploit completed, but no session was created. It means the vulnerability is there and I've exploited it, but there is nothing else I can do just because I've not done the exploit properly or as it's supposed to be done. And it tells me about the payload. But it means that if you have a weakness in a particular system, yes, you may be able to use that weakness. But to make that weakness working for you is one thing. And after it has working for you and now to starting doing further things is another thing. That's why we have the so-called payload. Payload is just a piece of code now that goes to that particular vulnerable machine, exploit the weakness, and give you a kind of interface that now you can do further things. You have exploited it now. Maybe it gives you access, or maybe it does one or more things. That is all about the payload. And here I didn't set it before purpose so that you can understand there is this notion of payload, that when you exploit a particular asset, you also need to have a payload, not just an exploit. An exploit combined with a payload, so that when it is executed successful, it gives you an interface so that you can do other things, like maybe if you have, it's like an access, then you can see the things that are there, what can be done, viewing the files, setting some configuration. It depends on the given exploit and the given payload that you have used so far. So I can know the possible payloads that I can use by using this particular framework. Now all these are possible payload that I can use for the particular module that I'm using. And for my case, I'm going to use this one. So I'm going to set, I say that set payload be equal to the one that I've just selected so far. Yeah, the payload has been set. So what it means now, here I have also not only the exploit plus the payload, which is also going to deliver the code, but also give me an interface to do further things after making the most of the vulnerability. And because I've used this payload is somehow named as reverse payload. Of course, there are different kind of payload and they provide you different kind of interface. One of the common interface that we make the most when we get is for you to have a shell to interact with a compromised machine. Now, these shells are different. Actually, it's just a command line prompt like the one we have here. They are different. There's one we call bind shell. Now we have this reverse shell, and they are the one that we call web shell. We are going to discuss about those stuff. So I said it's not the essence to talk more about them here. But here, the reverse one, they are the one that when you have exploited the particular vulnerability, those particular payload, those particular code that you have used, they connect back to your attacking machine and give you a command prompt or a shell so that you can start learning command from your attacking machine. And those commands are going to be executed directly to your compromised machine. So if you list the file, you see the file of the compromised machine and so and so. So this is the one that we have used. So we need to set now the address, because remember, it's going to connect back. So you need to tell us which address is it going to use to connect back to attacking machine. The attacking machine, and now we are talking is the one that we are using. And we saw its address. It's 10.0.2.15. Remember, the one that we have been attacking is .11. The attacking box that we are using, which have our carry Linux, is .15. So we set it there. And we tell it again, exploit. So we are waiting for it to do its exploitation until we see maybe an error message and make the most of it to understand it, or we see that we have a session or something of that nature so that we can start interacting with the box that we have compromised so far. All we need to do now is to wait for it to does its task and see what are we going next based on the feedback. So you wait, and of course, the time for it to execute depends on the particular payload, the particular vulnerability you are exploiting, and of course, even the configuration of the particular attacking machine. You may have the vulnerability, but somehow the attacking machine is configured in such a way that it drops the packets that are trying to exploit. So in real life, there are so many caveats as we keep on discovering them. Yeah, so it tells that we have a command session open. It means now we have already compromised the particular box. And not only compromised it, we have got also a shell session which is already connected back to our attacking machine, as we have just said. Now, to prove that we are in a different machine now, we can see the address. You see now, if config tells us the if config now is the attacking machine address. Remember, if we could just go here in our previous command, this is our attacking machine. This is where we are. This is where Kali Linux is. But now we have this shell given back to us. If you run if config, it tells us the address is .11. It means that we are already in the .11. We can run commands over there. So we can see even the files over there. You can run different commands here. Now, here we have completed the exploitation stage. Now we go to the next stage because we have exploited it, we have gained access. Now, anything we do from here onward is what we call post-exploitation. It may be gathering evidence in their different way, maybe just screenshotting, collecting data, or finding information that you can share, the information that was only found in the particular box. So if you share it in the report, one will just know, yeah, this person has really compromised the project. There are different things to do. Or maybe now assume that it was a public machine. You have exploited it. Now you are in it. It means now you are in the internal network of that particular organization. So in that, you are in a very good position now to even start scanning and finding vulnerabilities of assets in the same network as your compromised machines, and even exploiting further. We call it pivoting or lateral movement, whatever you may call it. So there are different things that we can do now. But for the purpose of this demonstration, we are just going to do something very simple in a post-exploitation. As we said, anything we do from here is post-exploitation. So what we are doing here is just to put an evidence that we managed to breach this box. And to do that, we add a text file, and of course we are going to put some text on it so that we can tell the admin, go to a particular box and you will see in this directory there is this text file we have added in it. It proved that we were there. That's a simple thing we do now for the demonstration. As I said, there are so many fast things could be done, as we'll be discovering in other videos that will be evolving on this series. So we use this command to create a file, and maybe let us call it pound, whatever that you may call it, .txt. We have created that file. Then we put this text that we breached your Unix box by so and so and so. That's it. And then we light this to the file that we have created so far, pound.txt. That's when we have done it. Then if we can decide to read that particular file, we see the text are there. So here we have left that evidence in it. So we can use it now. Remember, everything we are doing, we need to report. So in the reporting stage, which is the one that follows after this post-exploitation or proof of concept, they kind of going together. Then we can have evidence. Remember, if you have written all the blah, blah, but you don't have evidence of those vulnerabilities like being really breachable, it makes your report like less weight. So you can use it as evidence, like I've written this file, it has this text, you can see it in this directory, then they can prove, yeah, the box was breached. So the reporting right now does in the documentation of all we have done so far. So that's it. We just wanted to demonstrate this stage. Now from here onwards, we'll be focusing on tools, and we'll tell you how these tools can be used in this way and this way, and it is used in this stage. So now you can make the most of it, trying to assemble as many arsenals as possible. But as you keep on using them, you try to customize your arsenal. As we learned in previous video, there are so many tools, but you're not going to use them all. So that's it for today. But also remember, this stage are not as linear as we have just demonstrated. Sometimes you go to the next stage and realize that you missed something. You go back to find more information about the previous stages. So that's the way things are going in real life. But naturally, that's it. So please subscribe to the channel so that we grow. And please don't be mean. Knowledge grows by sharing. As you can see, I'm sharing this stuff. I'm taking a lot of time and effort to prepare them for you so that we all grow. So please tell others about this channel and tell them to subscribe so that the channel keeps on growing and we get many community members so that we can still make the most of it. But that's it for today. Until next time. And please, if you are serious, this video, you have to watch it all, because all the next video will be talking about tools. And if you know about tools, but you cannot use them together, you still left behind. But this video tells you what tools fits on what stage and how are they related. That's it. Have a good day.